gory instances of violence have taken place, usually take place, or in most cases take place, between communities which are not strangers to each other, but which are very close to each other. The European Holocaust was perhaps partly a result of the fact that German Jews were so well integrated in Germany that they were defining what Germany is. And that was very disturbing to many Germans, non-Jewish Gentiles, many non-Jewish Gentile Germans. And I suspect the same was true of the genocide that took place in India in 1947, where the goriest incidents you find are from Punjab, where the three communities, Hindus, Sikhs and Muslims, were very tightly related and couldn't define each other without referring to the other. In fact, there is a lovely saying of the Zapatistas which captures this beautifully. They say that this Subcommander Marcos, that we must host the otherness of others, not the sameness of others. Not that we don't like them because they are like us. There is no common human code we share, and therefore we must like them. We must like them. We must host their otherness, because that completes us. The sameness doesn't complete us, it duplicates us. But otherness of the other completes us. And that is an awareness I don't think I find much evidence in contemporary scholarly work.
I agree. There's a fantastic moment in Richard Attenborough's film on Gandhi, which I'm sure is predicated on fact, when he goes on one of his proverbial hunger strikes for the communal violence to stop. A Hindu man comes to him. You remember that very famous scene. And it says, you know, my son has just been killed. And stop this hunger strike. And Gandhi turns to him and says, I have a way of salvation. I have a way out for you. Just find a child whose father has been, a Muslim child whose father has been murdered, and adopt him as your son. And the man is just flabbergasted by this proposition and drops his dagger and is on his way out. That Gandhi stops him and says, and raise him as a Muslim. That's the embracing of the other. I mean, but the thing is, I don't know, as Einstein said about Gandhi, there would come a time that people will actually doubt that such a man actually walked on our earth. So, but the question of self and the other, I want to turn it around, Professor Nandy, and ask you to think through the idea of state. If we begin with a sort of a standard Weberian definition of state as a monopoly of violence. You remember, he said in Politics aus Beruf, he says, politics is monopoly of parenthetic legitimate violence. My question that I'm asking you to think through is, if we are to think of nonviolence as a modus operandi of our communal gatherings, do you think state as an institution, not post-colonial state or pre-colonial state or imperial state, just a state as an idea, if we begin with a Weberian notion of state as monopoly of violence, is something still viable, still we have to hang on to it? I know I'm in the presence of many politicians, so, you know, we're not politicians.
Let me give a roundabout answer to that. I would not for the moment go into a comparative analysis of what kind of state was more violent, what kind of state was less violent. We know that. That can be measured. And technological availability of technologies also makes a difference in that instance. So let us keep that aside for the moment. I want to say first of all, that in the modern context, we are faced with a modern nation state, which was consolidated, you could say, reaffirmed in the Treaty of Westphalia, 1648. So it is not a permanent fixture in human past, and it may not remain a permanent fixture in human past. In many places, you are already seeing the borders getting more porous, less rigid, more manipulative. Europe is a good instance. But this modern nation state, I think, has been a devastating experience in societies like ours, which are exceedingly diverse. Because their project from the beginning had been to build a homogeneous national state. And in fact, I can also say that personally I believe that the modern nation state has been a criminal enterprise in all societies. There is no doubt in my mind. There is no exception. I mean, France drives out the Protestants out of France. They take shelter in Switzerland, and there they remain, making watches, which we now wear. And in France itself becomes a predominantly aggressive Catholic country, and then ultimately it has established a majoritarianism of some kind, marginalized the minorities, and then it becomes benevolent and begins to sing paeans to secularism and tolerance and brotherhood and fraternity and so on and so forth. England has the same kind of history. The way Catholicism was repressed and marginalized, so it becomes a more kind of a dominant thing. When in India, it was forbidden to refer to as Scotch or a Welsh or an Irish by their nationalities. They are to be all called English. The myth was maintained that it was a single nation state, homogeneous nation state. Cricket was the national game of Britain. So it was national game only of the English. And not also national game. Football was the national game. They wanted to promote cricket, and that's the way it became the marker of the ethical superiority of the English, because that game has certain ethical principles built into it. So there is this part of the story, and I think it is our responsibility not to be enamored in the sense by this idea of nation state, to the extent that it no longer remains an instrument. To survive in today's world, we have to function as nation states. Even theocratic states function as nation states. Iran functions as a nation state. Its diplomacy, its defenses are no different from that other countries. I mean, it might support histories of Islamic science, but it won't go by them in its defense strategy. So, because in our past, there is enough experiments we have seen where you had given certain kind of freedom to the constituent elements in the state to live their own way and enjoy an enormous autonomy. In fact, differential allegiance to the central authority was one of the first principles of the Mughal state. So, in some cases, somebody paid a nominal